The thing got above. Got above. 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 Gangsters, cops, and politicians, get ready to rock on a mission. Each one of us shares our own vision. When I was on the yard, I went real hard. But I patrolled the streets, all the G's I meet. When I was on the yard, I went real hard. But I patrolled the streets, all the G's I meet. Well, got to stay woke. I like to thank God above. To thank God above. God above. To thank God above. God above. To thank God above. God above. Saludos. It's your host, Gabe Morales. Recently, I covered Latino gangs in a two-part series on Washington State. In this episode, I will cover Hispanic gangs in nearby Oregon and Idaho, where Latino gangs are also heavily influenced by California gangs, as well as local influences. Just like in Washington State, both Oregon and Idaho have a variety of climates with urban as well as rural areas. Both states have experienced growth in the Hispanic population. Per the 2020 census, there are nearly 140,000 more Latinos in Oregon than in the previous decade. Multnomah, Marion, and Washington counties have the biggest Latino populations, but rural counties east of the mountains, such as Morrow and Malheur counties, saw the Latino population grow the most. Over 1.5 million Latinos presently call Oregon home. Of course, most of these people are not gang members, but even if you only took 1% of that number, that would be approximately 6,000 gang members. And just like elsewhere in the United States, they mostly prey on their own. As I stated in the Portland Gangs video covering the evolution of black gangs in the Rose City, it is hard to know how many gangs and gang members are presently active today, since many of the tools used to track those numbers in the past have recently been taken away due to political pressure and accusations of police racial profiling. But according to the 2014 Multnomah County Comprehensive Gang Assessment, in that year, there were 133 gangs in the county where Portland sits, some of which were subgroups of larger ones. While black gang factions are often referred to as sets, I will use the traditional term for Chicano gangs here as cliques or barrios. The 18th Street Gang moved into Oregon in the 1980s as they exploded in the greater LA area and began spreading across the nation. They moved up north along the I-5 corridor and to the east. Once 18th Streeters were arrested and convicted in Oregon courts, they began to fill the Oregon Department of Corrections. The Morales brothers, led by the Beaner faction of 18th Street, yes, that's what they called it, not me, had a war with Dean Flaco White's Chicano crew of 18th Street. This in-house 18th Street war struck all the way to Oregon prisons, with the result being that White's faction eventually lost out. Things started to turn for White when two members of his crew were arrested in September 2003 for the December 2002 murder of 13 member Marcus Moultrie, who was shot to death near the intersection of Southeast 67th Avenue and Southeast Reedway Street by Portland's Mount Scott Park as he was walking home from a neighborhood store. One of White's co-defendants, Abraham Little Pepe Paredes Silva, had been shot by SOAR 13s a couple months prior to Moultrie's death. Another co-defendant, Adrian Little Mex Gutierrez, was shot in December 2002, approximately 1 month prior to Moultrie's homicide. Luis Valenzuela, Terrell Shady Tucker, and Jesus Chuis Gastelum were arrested in the case, and eventually anybody in the Flaco car was deemed no good. The Portland, Oregon area experienced a turf war between the 18th Street and the Tortilla Flats gang, which is another gang that came up from LA that originally hails from Compton, California. Tortilla Flats would be just one of many Sureno gangs who challenged 18th Street's dominance in the Rose City. Tortilla Flats lost out, although they are still active in the outskirts of Portland. One late spring day, the Portland Expo Center was jam-packed full of people. An excited crowd of 3,000 predominantly Hispanics were there for a Lowrider Magazine's car show that showcased custom vehicles. Now, normally, the Portland Police Bureau sent a grip of cops to such events. But for the June 6, 2004 show, not a single gang cop was there. That's right, not a single one. According to police, they were not even aware of the event, although they should have been. It was no big secret and was advertised widely in the lowrider and Hispanic community. They did become keenly aware after the body of 16-year-old Alex Alexander, a suspected member of the Paso Robles boys, was shot and killed by a rival after leaving the show located near the Oregon-Washington state line. He was the third Latino killed in a 5-week span that year, a deadly crime spree that indicated a growing Latino youth gang problem that took local social service providers as well as the Portland Police Bureau by surprise. The Paso Robles boys were from Southern California also, and were another gang that moved into the Portland area, just like many gangs have in the Pacific Northwest. Hildardo Blancas Perez shook his head in disagreement as he listened to a Washington County Chief Deputy District Attorney tie him to a callous murder in Aloha, Oregon. The prosecution told Washington County Circuit Court Judge Marco Hernandez that 3 men approached Constantino Cruz, who is said to have been a drug dealer and a member of the rival 18th Street Gang. In May 2007, some Bliss boys were seeking revenge for a beating that Cruz dealt to one of them just a few days earlier. Casimiro Blancas, Pablo Alejandro Guzman, and Hildardo were armed. All 3 were members of the 12th Street Hillstride Sureno gang and were sentenced to life. Florencia 13, Los Malos clique, is very active in the Milton Freewater, Oregon area, which is located in the northeast part of the state. They have ties to the Tri-Cities, Washington Florencia 13s. The Oregon side Florencia 13 often battle 18th Streeters who claim turf in nearby Walla Walla, Washington, in the southeast portion of that state, as I covered in the Eastern Washington Gangs episode. There are many gangs, like Sur 13 Calipas in Portland, as well as other Sureno gangs located throughout the state, such as the Hangout Boys and Tepa 13, which are both transplants from the greater Los Angeles area. Barrio Family Kings was a homegrown clica in Portland, Oregon. There are even Sur 13 in the small town of Nysa, Oregon. As far as Hispanic gangs go, Sureños control the greater Portland area, but just north, across the Columbia River, lies Vancouver, Washington, and Clark County, which has a sizable number of Norteños who often associate with Black gang members to boost their strength. Some of the Vancouver clicas are Barrio Rosemere Locos, Northtown Locos, and Fruit Valley Norteños. And of course, the only thing that lies between the 2 longtime rival factions of Sureños and Norteños is a bridge across the river. Norteños are also present in Canaan, Canby, Salem, Eugene, Klamath Falls, and Medford, Oregon. The Treasure Valley area of Idaho generally consists of Ada, Canyon, and Payette counties, and arguably ends at Malheur County, Oregon, in the Ontario-Nysa area. Canyon, Payette, and Malheur have historically been heavily agricultural, while Ada County, where the capital of Idaho, Boise, is located, is more urban suburban. Nearby Nampa and Caldwell, Idaho, have grown substantially since the 1980s, becoming a mini metro area within the greater Boise area. The Hispanic population in Idaho has also gone up. The U.S. Census showed that over 230,000 Hispanics were living in Idaho as of 2020, most of them living in the southern part of the state, especially the Southwest. As usual, the vast majority of these people are not gang members, but some are. We will talk about those individuals for the rest of this video, as well as some ways we can help keep our youth out of the gang lifestyle. Gang members come from faraway places like Colonia Oxnard, Chiques, and the California 805 area code, and they decided that Idaho would be a good place to do business. Prior to the 1980s, gangs in Canyon County tended to be unsophisticated neighborhood cliques, just as they were in Washington and Oregon. Fights were just that, fist fights. And shootings with weapons were virtually non-existent. Things began to change in the late 1980s when movies and music began to glamorize the gangster lifestyle, and the California Sureños and Norteños invaded the state. By that time, local neighborhood gangs morphed into Nampa Northside Gang, the Warlords, the Playboys Crips, and Tri-Cities Bombers, all active in Caldwell, Idaho. By the late 1980s, the Warlords and Playboy Crips were large and rival gangs, and the Tri-City Bombers thing from Texas soon fizzled out. The Warlords adopted red as their main color, mainly because they were in opposition to the Playboy Crips, who wore blue. Fights with weapons became more common, culminating in drive-by shootings between the two gangs around 1990 and 91. In Nampa, Idaho, a gang formed in opposition to the Northside, calling itself Southside. This was purely geographical at the time and had nothing to do with gangs that later were authentic SOR 13 gangs. Around 1992, a family from Texas transplanted to the Caldwell, Idaho area, with some of the kids claiming membership in Eastside Locos. They began to gather members from other gangs and developed a rivalry with the Playboy Crips. Soon, the Playboy Crips, who wore blue, learned that most Hispanics were not traditionally Crips, and they turned Sureno. They also changed their name to Westside because they opposed the Eastside and Lomo Locos after the Canyon Hill neighborhood that they claimed. Southside Nampa became True Blue Southside Locos 13 and adopted the Sureno ideology. Nampa Northside and the smaller Warlords faction became Norteños. Some of the first influential Eastside Locos members were Juan, Richard, and Robert Alanis. Richard and Robert were twins, later served time for murder. Richard was sent to the federal BOP, while Robert was relocated to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice prison system. Many other violent and influential Eastside Locos members were incarcerated, so the gang became very active in Idaho Department of Corrections. 18 Eastside Locos members were successfully prosecuted for gang recruitment and related crimes in 2009, significantly disrupting but not breaking the Eastside Locos. Eastside Locos consider all Norteños to be their enemies. Caldwell Norte Villains, which was an alliance consisting of Valle Campo Locos, Warlords, and other Caldwell Norteños, battled another Sureno gang called Westside Lomos. As stated before, Westside Locos were originally called Playboy Crips when they really didn't know what they were doing. Eventually, they adopted a Sureno identity and changed their name to reflect opposition to the East Side, which they referred to as Cheeside or Cheesers. Early influential Westside Locos members included Pablo, Javier, and Abel Rodriguez, Greg and Freddie Esparza, and Baldomar Gomez. Many of their members were also incarcerated. Thus, it gave Westside Locos a loud voice among Sureños in Idaho DLC. Senior members were prosecuted for drug trafficking in 2007, causing a significant disruption to the gang. While they primarily beef with Eastside Locos out on the street, this rivalry is usually set aside inside prison in favor of a unified Sureno ideology. In fact, out on the street, Westside Locos has, at times, even cooperated with Nampa Northside Norteños in drug businesses in their efforts against the Eastside Locos rivals. In November 2019, 15 Westside Locos gang members were indicted on meth charges. Brown Magic Clica had its origins from two gangs, Hispanics Causing Panic and Eastside La Primera gangs in Nysa, Oregon. These two groups combined in the early 1990s to form Brown Magic Clica. Many of the original members were actually related by blood. Brown Magic Clica became Sureños around 1992 and quickly spread to Ontario, Oregon. Original members included Mariano Insane Perez, Hector Puppet Almaraz, and Alfredo Papos Castro. Perez later got life for shooting a Nampa police officer. Almaraz was given life for murder, and Castro got hit with the RICO case by the feds. Today, there are still some Brown Magic Clica members around. Their rivals include all Norteños, although their primary rival is the 18th Street Shadow Park Locals, which are a rival Sureno gang. 30 Brown Magic Clica members were successfully prosecuted under the RICO statute for crimes in 2011. Los Sol 13 was a Nampa, Caldwell, and Boise, Idaho area gang created by gang members at the Idaho Maximum Security Prison to end the war between rival Sureno gangs, specifically Westside Locos and Eastside Locos. It was an effort to unite all Sureno gangs in the maximum and high-level prisons. Over time, the group spread to other Idaho prisons and jails and out to the streets, as Los Sol 13 members were released. One of the main founders and leaders of the Los Sols was Mario Gonzalez, who was shot approximately 2 weeks after his prison release. Simona Montanales is a rare case of a female gang leader of a predominantly male gangsters. She was a Caldwell, Idaho woman who in 2008 became the first person in Idaho to be sentenced under the then new Criminal Gang Enforcement Act. Authorities said Montanales recruited teens and even younger children at concerts and car shows to join her gang. Nampa Northside evolved from a neighborhood gang in the Hispanic barrio located on the north side of Nampa during the 1980s, and they later adopted a Norteño identity. Several influential early members included Michael Trejo. Nampa Northside was made up of two main cliques, Northside Big Time and Northside Tiny Toons, with Big Time being the senior clica and Tiny Toons being the junior clica. They are the dominant gang among Norteños in Idaho DOC and have verified links to Nuestra Familia in the California federal system, as well as to other Norteño gangs in Northern California. Like in Washington State, several Idaho Norteños have communicated with Nuestra Familia General Skip Villanueva and the federal BOP. Skip appears to have the final authority and ruling on all Norteño soldados in the Pacific Northwest. As I said in many of my previous videos, the streets affect what happens inside jails and prisons, and jails and prison gangsters affect the streets. In early June 2018, inmates rioted at the Canyon County Jail. 12 inmates were charged in that incident, which involved gangs. Some of you may be asking yourself, do more Black and Latino youth have less respect for the law, or does the system actually treat them differently, and that's why they act out? The answer appears to be both. Many youth of color live in neighborhoods where violence and peer pressure is very high. They tend to carry more weapons because they have a fear of being victimized. They'll also use these weapons to victimize others. They tend to use drugs and alcohol more to reduce stress as they self-medicate, and their parents cannot afford a professional counselor or psychiatrist. They are often frustrated at a lack of well-paying jobs and do not have job training to compete in the marketplace. They may also face discrimination based on their appearance. They often attend underfunded schools, so they may not be able to get a first-rate education or college scholarships. They're often born into this world by young parents who don't yet have many good child raising skills or life skills to teach their children. They may be abused or feel unwanted at home, or their parents may be too busy working to pay very much attention to them. Because of all these social issues, more youth of color tend to engage more often in violence, drugs, and other risky behaviors. When they do this, they often act out and draw police attention. Police usually stop them based on probable cause, but can also use their discretion to question them. If the youth walks away when police question them, the situation can quickly escalate into a confrontation. The youth may feel they are being racially profiled, while police may feel they have something to hide. Many times, neither side tries to de-escalate, and so a use of force results. And many times it's viewed by people who do not see the initial encounter as police overreaction, even police brutality. But are the answers to the gang problems really that easy? What about all the successful Black and Latino youth that never get arrested and do quite well in society? They grew up in poor neighborhoods. What made them different? Statistics show the African American youth arrest rate remains higher than any other ethnic category, with Latino youth following them closely as the second highest group per their population. But are claims of racial discrimination the only factor? The Asian youth arrest rate is actually lower than white youth population. So many questions still remain, and even fewer answers. I have some friends in Oregon DOC that told me that they actually stopped tracking security threat groups the way they used to, and that things are really a mess inside the prisons. The Oregon Youth Authority reports it was seeing an increase in the number of juveniles and gangs within its system, and they changed the way they dealt with at-risk and gang-involved youth. Indeed, with 90% of youth, intervention is good therapy. In 2012 in Oregon, by House Bill 4165, the Youth Development Council immediately put federal funds to work in communities across the state to help support youth gang prevention and intervention efforts. Only more time will tell if these more lenient approaches will work. But it appears that some of the more hardcore elements within the gangs see the current system as being weak, and crime rates may be going up because of it. So I think it takes a balanced approach. Official reports state that gang activity continues to manifest itself in urban and rural locations throughout the state of Oregon and Idaho. Gangs are serious, persistent, in most areas and are a growing problem. Jerry Muma worked for years with youth in Idaho and other states, and has more recently focused her efforts on combating sex trafficking that many gangs are involved in. She focuses on main goals. The most important thing is early prevention. She is talking about second to fourth grade or even earlier if family dynamics indicate a high risk. Almost of equal importance is parent education and risk factor evaluation. If mom is concentrating on trying to survive in an abusive relationship, how can she parent a child? As far as collaboration, Jerry says that nonprofits, government agencies, and faith organizations must work together. She knows all too well this is not easy, and sometimes there's a sense of competition versus working well together. For instance, there are government grants, but these monies are very competitive, and some programs have actually shut down because of lack of funding. And COVID did not make things better. The Northwest is a great place to live. It is generally safer than most places in the country, and it is a good place to raise families. Gangs are not out of control everywhere yet, but they can easily create more violence if we don't remain vigilant. I know that we have lots of great gang cops and corrections officers serving on our forces. We must hold ourselves and the community accountable in regards to any person who breaks the law. We need support, suppression efforts, as well as prevention and intervention. Local authorities continue to track Hispanic gangs in Oregon and Idaho via intelligence systems and via groups like the Northwest Gang Investigators Association, which I am proud to support, led by my good friend Brad Richmond. I know this video was short, but I hope you found it to be useful. As you can see, I've been very busy trying to bring you quality content on a variety of criminal justice issues. So stay tuned. Until next time, this is Gabe Morales signing off for Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians.